The ship was small. It was not made for war. It was made for science, for discovery, for the quiet work of studying stars and planets far from home. Una stood at the observation window, watching the darkness of space stretch out forever. Behind her, the crew moved through their daily tasks. 6 people, 6 friends, 6 humans alone at the edge of their solar system. Tai-Ho walked up beside her. He was tall, with kind eyes and a voice that always made her feel calm. They had worked together for 3 years now. He handed her a cup of coffee. "You were thinking too much again?" he said. Una smiled but did not look away from the window. "There is so much out there. Do you ever wonder if something is looking back?" Tai-Ho laughed softly. "If they are, I hope they are friendly." The alarm came without warning. Red lights flooded the ship. The floor shook beneath their feet. Una grabbed the wall to steady herself as the coffee cup fell and shattered on the ground. Through the observation window, she saw it. A ship. No, not a ship. A mountain of black metal that blocked out the stars. It was so large that her mind could not understand it at first. It simply appeared as if space itself had torn open to let it through. "What is that?" Someone screamed. The answer came in the form of smaller vessels pouring from the massive ship like insects from a hive. They moved fast, faster than anything human technology could match. The first blast hit their ship and threw Una to the floor. She heard screaming. She heard metal tearing. She pushed herself up and saw Tai-Ho pulling a younger crew member toward the escape pods. The lights flickered. Another blast. The wall beside her exploded inward, and she was thrown again. When she opened her eyes, they were already inside. The creatures were tall and thin. Their skin was pale gray, almost white, stretched tight over long bones. Their eyes were large and black, like holes cut into their faces. They moved with terrible speed, their long fingers wrapped around weapons that glowed with cold blue light. Una watched as they killed her crew. One by one, quick, efficient. No anger, no emotion. Just death, delivered like a task to be completed. Tai-Ho grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a console. His breathing was fast. His hands were shaking. "We have to hide." "We have to." A blast hit him in the back. Una caught him as he fell. His weight pulled her down to her knees. She pressed her hands against his chest, trying to stop the blood. But there was too much. It spread across her fingers, warm and wet. "Una," he whispered. His eyes were already losing focus. "I am sorry. Do not talk," she said. Her voice was steady. She did not know how. "You will be fine. Just stay with me." Yes. But she felt it. The moment his heart stopped. The moment his body became heavy in a different way. She felt his last breath leave him, and then he was gone. The creatures surrounded her. She did not look up. She kept her hands on Tai-Ho's chest, feeling the warmth slowly fade from his body. One of the creatures spoke in a language she did not understand. Another one grabbed her arm and pulled her to her feet. She did not fight. She did not scream. She simply stood, her hands covered in blood, and looked at the creature holding her. It was taller than her by almost 2 feet. Its black eyes studied her face. She knew it was searching for something. Fear, panic, the desperate struggle of prey. Caught by a predator, Una gave it nothing. They put metal restraints on her wrists. They pushed her forward through the broken corridors of her ship, past the bodies of her friends. She walked. She did not stumble. She did not cry. She looked at everything. The way the creatures moved. The symbols on their armor. The weapons they carried. She memorized it all. The smaller vessel that took her to the massive ship was cold. The creature sat in silence, watching her. She sat straight, her bloody hands resting on her knees. One of the creatures made a sound that might have been confusion. Another responded with what sounded like a question. She was interesting to them. She could feel it. They had expected something else. Something broken. Something afraid. The massive ship swallowed the smaller vessel whole. Una was pulled through corridors that stretched on forever. Past thousands of the pale creatures, past prisoners in cages who screamed and clawed at the bars. Different species. Different shapes. All of them afraid. She was placed in a cell. The walls were smooth and gray. There was no bed, no chair, nothing but empty space and cold light. The door sealed behind her with a sound like a tomb closing. Una stood in the center of the room and waited. Somewhere on this ship, she knew someone was watching her. Someone important. She could feel attention on her like weight on her shoulders. They wanted to see what she would do. Would she scream? Would she beat her fists against the walls? Would she collapse and weep? She sat down on the cold floor. She crossed her legs. She closed her eyes in her mind. She saw Taiho's face. She felt his blood on her hands. The grief was there, waiting for her, huge and terrible. But she pushed it away. She locked it in a box deep inside her heart. There would be time for grief later. Right now, she needed to think. She needed to survive. She needed to understand she had been taken by an alien empire that killed without hesitation. She was alone, unarmed, trapped on a ship so large it could probably destroy her entire planet. By every measure, she should be afraid. But fear was a choice. Panic was a luxury she could not afford. In a room far above her cell, Oren watched through a screen. He was old, even by the standards of his people. He had served the Veth Dominion for 600 years. He had broken the minds of countless prisoners from countless worlds. He knew fear like a musician knows music. He could see it, smell it, taste it in the air. He watched the human woman sit in perfect stillness, and he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Unease. What is she doing? Asked a younger officer beside him. Oren did not answer. He leaned closer to the screen, studying the woman's face. Her eyes were closed, but there was no peace there. There was something else. Something hard. Something patient. She is waiting, Oren said finally. For what? Oren did not know. And that, more than anything, was what disturbed him. He had conquered 437 species. He had seen every form of fear the galaxy could produce. But he had never seen this. He had never seen prey that did not know it was prey. He recorded a note in his personal file. The first of many he would make about this human woman. The note said simply, "She shows no fear." I do not understand why it would take him many days to learn the answer. And when he did, he would wish he had never asked the question. 3 days passed. Una knew this because she counted her heartbeats, measured her breathing, tracked the cycles of light in her cell. The Veth tried to break her in small ways. The walls moved when she tried to sleep, shifting just enough to wake her. Strange sounds filled the air at random times. The temperature changed without warning, from burning hot to freezing cold. These were old tricks. Una recognized them. Humans had used similar methods on each other for thousands of years. She found it almost funny that an alien empire, with all its technology and power, used the same simple tools of torture that humans had invented long ago. She adapted. She slept in short periods, waking before the walls could move. She controlled her breathing to manage the temperature changes. She let the sounds wash over her without reaction. The Veth were trying to make her feel helpless. Instead, they were giving her information. They were showing her that they understood fear very well. Too well. It was their only tool. On the 4th day, Oren came to her cell. The door opened, and he entered alone. He was taller than the other Veth and older. His gray skin had a papery quality, thin and worn. But his black eyes were sharp with intelligence. He moved slowly, carefully, like a predator that did not need to rush because it had never known failure. Una remained seated on the floor. She looked up at him and waited. Oren studied her for a long moment. He could sense things that other Veth could not. 600 years of practice had made him sensitive to the smallest signs of fear. A quickened pulse, a change in breathing, the subtle smell of stress hormones in the air. He found nothing. The human woman's body was calm. Her mind was quiet. It was as if she did not understand the danger she was in. "You are not afraid," he said. His voice was low and rough, like stones grinding together. He had learned her language from the ship's translation systems. Yuna tilted her head slightly. Should I be? Every creature fears death. It is the most basic instinct in the universe. Is it? Oren felt a flicker of irritation. He was not used to prisoners who asked questions. He pulled a small device from his robes and activated it. A hologram appeared in the air between them. It showed a planet, blue and green and white, beautiful. This is your world, Oren said. Earth. We have been watching it for many years. Your species is young, weak. You have only just begun to explore beyond your own moon. You are not a threat to us. Yuna looked at the image of her home. Her expression did not change. In 70 rotations of your planet, our fleet will arrive, Oren continued. We will offer your leaders a choice. Surrender and serve the Veth Dominion, or be destroyed. Based on our observations, we expect them to surrender. Your species is not united. You fight among yourselves. You are afraid of your own shadows. He waved his hand, and the hologram changed. Now it showed cities burning, humans in chains, bodies lying in the streets. If they do not surrender, this is what will happen. We have done this 437 times. We have never failed. Your world will join the Dominion one way or another. Yuna watched the images of destruction. She watched her people suffer and die. And then she looked back at Oren. May I ask you a question? She said. Oren was surprised, but he hid it. You may. Of those 437 species you have conquered, how many of them evolved as prey? The question made no sense to him. What do you mean? On every planet, life follows certain patterns, Yuna said. Her voice was calm, like a teacher explaining a simple concept. Some creatures evolve to hunt. Some evolve to be hunted. The ones who are hunted develop strong fear responses. They run, they hide, they freeze. Fear keeps them alive. Oren considered this. Most species we have encountered show strong fear responses. It is universal. It is universal for prey, Yuna said. But humans did not evolve as prey. We evolved as persistence predators. She stood up slowly. Oren did not step back, but something in him wanted to. On our world, we were not the fastest or the strongest, Yuna continued. We could not outrun the animals we hunted. So we did something else. We followed them. We walked after them for hours, for days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. We did not need to be fast. We just needed to never stop. She took a step toward Oren. Her eyes never left his. When a prey animal is chased, it feels fear. Its heart races. Its body floods with chemicals that prepare it to run or hide. But humans do not feel fear first. We feel anger. We feel determination. When something threatens us, our instinct is not to run. It is to fight, to chase, to follow until the threat is gone. Oren's hand moved toward the weapon at his side without him realizing it. You have built your empire on fear, Yuna said. You show your enemies terrible things, and they break. They surrender. They kneel. But you have never met a species like us. You have never met prey that does not know it is prey. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of something patient and hungry. You are afraid of me, she said. I can see it in the way you stand. The way your hand moves toward your weapon. You do not understand why I am not afraid, and that terrifies you. Because if I am not afraid, then your power over me is nothing. Your threats are nothing. Your empire is built on a foundation of sand. Oren drew his weapon and pointed it at her chest. His hand was steady, but inside, something was shaking. I could kill you right now, he said. Yes, Yuna agreed. You could, but you will not. Because dead, I am just a body. Alive, I am a mystery you need to solve. And you are afraid that the answer will destroy everything you believe. They stood in silence for a long moment. The weapon hummed with deadly energy. Yuna did not look at it. She kept her eyes on Oren's face. Finally, Oren lowered the weapon. He stepped back toward the door. Before he left, he turned to look at her one more time. What? He asked. Una sat back down on the floor and crossed her legs. I am human, she said, and we are nothing like what you have faced before. You should have left us alone. The door closed behind Orin. He stood in the corridor for a long time, his ancient heart beating faster than it had in centuries. That night, he sent a message to the Pale Council, the ruling body of the Veth Dominion. In 600 years of service, he had never recommended against a conquest. But now he wrote words that would change the course of galactic history. The message was simple. Do not invade Earth. This species is different. They do not fear death. They welcome it. If we attack them, we will awaken something that we cannot control. The Pale Council received his message. They read it, and they laughed. One human woman, they said. One prisoner driven mad by captivity. Orin was getting old. His judgment was failing. The invasion would proceed as planned. They did not know that their empire was already beginning to crack. And the crack had started in a small gray cell. In the heart of their greatest ship, where a human woman sat in perfect stillness and waited for the galaxy to burn. Stories spread like fire on a ship full of soldiers with nothing to do but wait. The story of the human woman spread faster than most. Kale first heard it in the eating hall. 3 days after Orin's visit to her cell. He was young by Veth standards, only 80 years old, barely old enough to serve on a warship. He sat with other soldiers his age, eating the gray paste that passed for food, and listened to the older warriors talk. She did not blink, one of them said. Orin pointed a weapon at her heart, and she smiled at him. Smiled. Like she wanted him to shoot. That is impossible, another said. Every creature fears death, not this one. I have seen the recordings. She sits in her cell like she is waiting for us to entertain her. Like we are the prisoners and she is the guard. Kale said nothing. But that night he could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human woman. What kind of creature did not fear death? What kind of mind could face the most powerful empire in the galaxy and feel nothing? The next morning he was assigned to guard duty outside her cell. He stood at attention, his weapon in his hands, and tried not to look at the small window in the door, but his eyes kept moving toward it. Finally he looked. She was sitting in the center of the cell, just as the story said. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Or perhaps at everything. He could not tell. Then she turned her head and looked directly at him. Kale's hearts beat faster. He knew she could not see him through the one-way glass. It was impossible. But she was looking right at him, and something in her gaze made him feel like a small creature being watched by something very large and very hungry. I know you are there, she said. Her voice was clear through the door's speaker. I can hear your breathing. You are young, nervous, probably your first time guarding a prisoner. Kale did not respond. He was not supposed to speak with prisoners. What is your name? She asked. Silence. My name is Una, she said. I am from a planet called Earth. It is very far from here. There are oceans on my world. Have you ever seen an ocean? Great bodies of water that stretch from one edge of the world to the other. Sometimes they are calm. Sometimes they are violent. But they are always there, always moving, always alive. Kale found himself leaning closer to the window. Do you have family? Una asked. On your home world? Parents? Brothers? Sisters? Children? Before he knew what he was doing, Kale spoke. A sister. She is on the colony world. I have not seen her in 20 years. What is her name? Vera Una smiled. It was a gentle smile, not like the one she had given Orin. That is a beautiful name. Do you miss her? Kale's throat felt tight. I do not think about it. But you do, Una said softly. You think about it every day. You wonder if she remembers you. You wonder if you will ever see her again. You wonder if this war, this endless conquering, will ever end so you can go home. Kale stepped back from the window. His hands were shaken. How do you know that? Because I am human, Una said, and we have been missing our families since we first learned to walk. Loneliness is not a weakness, Kale. It is what makes us real. It is what makes us fight for something beyond ourselves. That night, Kale dreamed of his sister. He woke up with tears on his face for the first time in 50 years. The stories about the human woman grew stranger. Soldiers who guarded her reported that she asked them questions. Not about military secrets or the ship's layout. She asked about their lives, their families, their fears and hopes. She listened. She remembered some soldiers refused to guard her cell anymore. They said she was dangerous, that she could see inside their minds. Others volunteered for extra shifts, drawn to her like insects to a flame. Oren watched all of this with growing concern. He had broken thousands of prisoners. He knew all the techniques, all the methods of resistance. But this human woman was not resisting. She was doing something far more dangerous. She was making them think. The Veth. Dominion had survived for 10,000 years because its soldiers did not think. They obeyed. They feared their commanders more than they feared death. Fear was the chain that held the empire together, but Yuna was not creating fear. She was creating doubt, and doubt was far more dangerous than fear could ever be. Meanwhile, Yuna was learning. Every conversation with a guard gave her more information. She learned about the structure of the Veth military, the hierarchy of command, the tensions between different factions. She learned that many Veth soldiers were not loyal to the Empire. They served because they had no choice. Their families were hostages. Their homeworlds were occupied. The Empire held them through the same fear it used on conquered species. She learned about the Pale Council, the ancient rulers who had not left their chambers in 1,000 years. They were the heart of the Empire. Without them, Dominion would fall apart, and she learned that her message had reached Earth. During her second week of captivity, she found a weakness in the ship's communication system. A small console in the interrogation room that Oren used to show her images of Earth's destruction. It took her 3 sessions to find the flaw, 5 more to understand how to use it. On the 8th session, while Oren showed her projections of human cities in flames, she used the console to send a burst transmission toward her homeworld. The message was short. It contained everything she had learned about the Veth, their biology, based on her observations, their psychology, based on her conversations, their weaknesses, based on logic and intuition. In one final line, they rule through fear. Show them we do not fear. She did not know if the message would reach Earth. She did not know if anyone would believe it. But she had done what she could. The rest was up to her people. Oren never discovered the transmission. He was too focused on the growing problem within his own ship. Soldiers were asking questions they had never asked before. Why do we conquer? What is the purpose of the Dominion? Is there another way? He reported these concerns to the Pale Council. They dismissed him again. These were the words of a tired old interrogator who had lost his edge. The invasion fleet was already moving toward Earth. In 40 days, the human world would fall like all the others. But in the dark corners of the ship, in the quiet moments between shifts, soldiers whispered the name of the human woman who did not fear. And some of them, for the first time in their long lives, began to wonder if fear was the only way to live. Kale stood outside Yuna's cell for the last time. Tomorrow, he would be transferred to a different section of the ship. He had requested the transfer himself. He could not stop thinking about his sister. He could not stop questioning everything he had been taught. "Thank you," he said through the door. Yuna looked up at him. "For what?" "For reminding me that I am more than a soldier, that there is something beyond this ship, beyond this war." He paused. "I do not know what you are planning, but whatever it is, I hope you succeed." Yuna stood and walked to the door. She placed her hand against the glass, directly over where his hand rested on the other side. "Remember your sister," she said. "Remember why you fight, and when the time comes, choose." Kale did not understand what she meant, but he would. Soon enough, they all would. The ship continued toward Earth. The Pale Council laughed at Oren's warnings, and in her cell, Yuna sat in perfect stillness, waiting for the storm she had started to reach her. Homeworld. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered a species that did not know how to surrender. The Veth fleet emerged from fold space like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 warships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They filled the space around Earth, blocking out the stars, casting shadows across the moon. It was a display of power designed to crush hope before a single shot was fired. Commander Dami stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, watching the alien armada arrange itself in perfect formation. She was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, the crew worked in tense silence. They all knew what they were facing. They all knew the odds. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. The main screen flickered, and a Veth appeared. It was not Orin, but another of the Pale Council's representatives, a creature even older and more terrible. Its voice echoed through the bridge like a funeral bell. "People of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Veth Dominion. You will surrender your weapons. You will surrender your leaders. You will kneel before your new masters. Resistance is not merely futile, it is illogical. In the history of the Dominion, no species has survived defiance. You have one rotation of your planet to respond. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Dami looked around her bridge. Young faces. Old faces. All of them afraid. She understood. She was afraid too. But 3 weeks ago, she had received a message from the edge of the solar system. A burst transmission from a ship that was supposed to be dead. From a woman named Yuna, who had been captured by the enemy. The message had changed everything. Dami had read it 100 times. She had shared it with the other commanders, with the world's leaders, with everyone who needed to know. The message was not just information about the Veth. It was a challenge. A call to arms. A reminder of what humans were capable of when they chose courage over fear. She opened a channel to the Veth fleet. "This is Commander Dami of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "We have received your terms. We have considered them carefully. And we have decided to give you a counter-offer." She paused. "On every Veth ship, officers leaned forward to listen. Can turn around and leave our system. You can go back to your masters and tell them that Earth is not worth the cost. Or you can stay and learn why humanity has never been conquered. Not by nature, not by disease, not by each other, and certainly not by you." The Veth representative's voice came back, sharp with amusement. "You cannot be serious. You are one world. We are 300 warships. Your technology is centuries behind ours. This is not a battle. It is an execution." Dami smiled. It was a smile that Yuna would have recognized. "Then execute us," she said. "If you can." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Launch all fighters. Signal the moon bases. Tell the submarines to surface and target anything that enters atmosphere." Ouch. She straightened her uniform. "Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of." Battle began. Human ships poured from Earth's orbit like angry hornets defending their hive. They were smaller, weaker, slower than the Veth vessels. They died in waves. But they did not stop coming. Every time a ship was destroyed, 2 more took its place. Every time a squadron fell, another emerged from the planet's shadow. The Veth had expected surrender. They had expected fear. Instead, they found something they had never encountered in 10,000 years of conquest. They found a species that fought harder the more it lost. Human pilots flew suicide missions into the engines of Veth warships. Ground batteries fired until their barrels melted. Soldiers who should have been paralyzed with terror charged enemy positions with nothing but knives and fury. The Veth killed them by the thousands, but more kept coming. Always more. On Orin's flagship, the old interrogator watched the battle with growing horror. This was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Conquered species did not fight like this. They broke. They ran. They begged for mercy. Humans were doing none of those things. They were laughing. Some of them were actually laughing as they died. "Bring the prisoner to the bridge," Orin commanded. Yuna was brought in chains, escorted by 4 guards. She had been watching the battle on the screen in her cell. Now she stood on the bridge of the enemy flagship, surrounded by the creatures who had killed her crew, and she watched her people die. "Do you see?" Orin said. "Your species is being destroyed. Your world will burn. Everything you love will be turned to ash. This is what defiance brings." Una watched a human fighter crash into a Veth cruiser, its pilot screaming a battle cry that echoed through the communications channels. The cruiser's engine exploded. Both ships died together. "Do not understand," she said softly. "Understand what?" "Your people are dying." "Yes, and they know it. They knew it when they launched. They knew the odds. They knew they could not win." Una turned to look at Orin. "But they are not fighting to win. They are fighting to show you what you face. Every ship you destroy, every soldier you kill, is a message. We do not break. We do not kneel. We do not stop." An explosion rocked the flagship. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted reports of hull breaches. "Human boarding parties," someone yelled. "They are inside the ship." Orin's eyes widened. Boarding parties? In the middle of a battle they were losing? It was madness. It was suicide. It was exactly what Una had told him humans would do. The battle spread through the corridors of the flagship. Human soldiers, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with everything they had. They used weapons taken from fallen enemies. They used their fists. They used their teeth. Veth soldiers who had never known fear suddenly understood what it felt like to be hunted. On the bridge, Orin drew his weapon and pointed it at Una. "Order them to stop." "I cannot," Una said. "I am not their commander. And even if I were, they would not stop. This is what we are. This is what you created when you chose to threaten our home." Kale stood among the guards surrounding Una. He had been transferred to bridge security just days ago. Now he watched the human woman face Orin without fear, and he remembered their conversations through the door of her cell. He remembered her asking about his sister. He remembered her words, "When the time comes, choose." The time had come. "Execute her," Orin commanded. Kale raised his weapon. His hands trembled. The other guards waited for him to fire. He thought of Vera. He thought of his homeworld. He thought of all the years he had served an empire built on terror. All the questions he had never allowed himself to ask. He lowered his weapon. "No," he said. The word fell like a bomb in the silent bridge. Orin stared at him in disbelief. "What did you say?" "I said no." Kale stepped between Una and the other guards. "I will not kill her. I will not serve fear anymore." The other guards hesitated. They had heard the stories about the human woman. They had felt the doubt spreading through the ship. Now one of their own was defying a direct order, and they did not know what to do. Orin raised his own weapon, pointing it at Kale. "You will die for this, and I will die free," Kale said. "And that is more than I have ever been in your empire." The door to the bridge exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, weapons blazing. In the chaos that followed, Kale grabbed Una's arm and pulled her toward a side corridor. "Come," he said. "I know a way to the escape pods." Una looked at him with something like surprise. "Why are you helping me?" Kale thought of his sister. He thought of oceans he had never seen. "Because you showed me another way," he said. "Now show your people they were right to believe." They ran together through the burning ship, human and Veth, enemy and ally. As the battle raged around them and the galaxy began to change forever, the flagship was dying. Fire spread through its corridors like blood through veins. Explosions tore holes in its ancient hull. The great ship that had conquered 100 worlds was being torn. Apart by creatures it had dismissed as primitive, Una moved through the chaos with Kale at her side. She did not run. She walked. She had learned that walking was its own kind of weapon. It said that she was not afraid. It said that she had time. It said that she was in control. Veth soldiers saw her coming and fled. The stories had spread too far. She was not just a prisoner anymore. She was a symbol of everything they had been taught to fear but never understood. They reached the central corridor that led to the bridge. Human soldiers had taken control of most of the ship's critical systems. The Veth crew was either dead, captured, or hiding. The battle outside had turned. Earth's forces were still outnumbered, but the Veth fleet was in disarray. Ships that had never known defeat were retreating. Commanders who had never felt fear were giving orders to withdraw. Yuna entered the bridge. Orin stood alone among the wreckage. The other officers were gone. The screens around him showed images of his dying fleet, his crumbling empire. Everything he had built over 6 centuries turning to ash. He looked at Yuna with black eyes that finally held something other than cold superiority. They held defeat. How? He asked, how is this possible? You are one species, one world. We have conquered 437 civilizations. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. And in all that time, Yuna said, you never learned the most important lesson. She walked toward him. Human soldiers flanked her, weapons raised, but she waved them back. This moment was not about force. It was about truth. You built your empire on fear, she said. You made every species believe they were helpless. You made them believe that resistance was impossible. And they accepted it because their nature told them to submit. Fear was coded into their bodies, into their very cells. They could not fight it any more than they could fight gravity. She stopped in front of Orin, close enough to touch him. But humans are different. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages, predators, disease, disasters. We survived not by running, not by hiding, but by facing our fears and pushing through them. Fear does not control us. It warns us. And when the warning fails to stop us, we become something that no fearful creature can understand. Orin's legs gave out. He sank to his knees, not from injury, but from the weight of understanding crushing down on him. You are monsters, he whispered. No, Yuna said. We are just different. We are the persistence predators you never knew existed. And now, the galaxy knows it too. She turned to the communications console and opened a channel. Not just to the Veth fleet. To every ship in the system. To every relay station in range. To every corner of the Veth Dominion where subjugated species waited in chains. This is Yuna of Earth. I am broadcasting from the bridge of the Veth flagship. As you can see, the ship has fallen. The Veth fleet is retreating. Earth has not surrendered. She paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of light years. For 10,000 years, the Dominion has told you that resistance is impossible. They showed you their weapons. They showed you their power. They made you believe that you had no choice but to serve. But today, a single planet proved them wrong. Not because we were stronger. Not because we had better technology. But because we refused to be afraid. Her voice grew stronger. The Veth do not rule through power. They rule through fear. And fear only works if you accept it. They cannot conquer a species that will not break. They cannot control minds that will not submit. Their empire is built on a lie, and today that lie was exposed. Images of the battle played across screens throughout the Dominion. Human ships crashing into enemy vessels. Soldiers charging impossible odds. A planet refusing to kneel. I'm sending you everything I learned about the Veth, their biology, their psychology, their weaknesses. Use this information. Share it. Remember it. And know that if one small world can stand against them, so can you. The chains you wear are made of fear. Break them. Rise. And join us in building a galaxy where no species has to bow to another. She ended the transmission. The silence that followed lasted only seconds. Then, across the Dominion, rebellions began. On worlds that had been conquered for millennia, species that had forgotten how to fight remembered. Guards who had served out of fear turned on their masters. The cracks that had started in Unicell spread across an empire, shattered it. The Veth fleet withdrew from Earth's system. Not in orderly retreat, but in desperate flight. Their homeworlds were calling for help. Their colonies were burning. The Pale Council, those ancient rulers who had not left their chambers in 1,000 years, finally emerged to find their empire in ruins. It would take years for the Dominion to fall completely, but fall it did. And every world that rose against it remembered the human woman who had refused to show fear. 3 months after the battle, Yuna returned to Earth. She did not want a parade. She did not want medals or speeches or monuments. She asked for only one thing. Time alone at Taiho's grave. Commander Dami arranged it. The cemetery was cleared. Guards stood at a distance, giving her privacy. Yuna walked alone through rows of white stones until she found the one she was looking for, Taiho. His name, the dates of his life, and below that, words she had chosen herself. He died protecting what he loved. Yuna knelt on the grass. She placed her hand on the cold stone. For the first time since his death, she allowed herself to feel the tears came. Not quietly, but in great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. All the grief she had locked away, all the pain she had refused to feel, poured out of her like water from a broken dam. She cried for Taiho. She cried for her crew. She cried for all the soldiers who had died in the battle. For all the people who would never come home. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she wiped her eyes and looked up at the sky. Dami found her there an hour later, still sitting by the grave. The commander stood at a respectful distance and waited. "They are calling you a hero," Dami said eventually. "The woman who broke the Veth Dominion. They want to put your face on stamps. Name ships after you. Build statues." Yuna shook her head slowly. "I am not a hero. I did not fire a single weapon. I did not fly a single ship. I just refused to be afraid." "That is exactly why you are a hero," Dami said. "Anyone can fight. Very few can face death without flinching. You showed the galaxy what courage really means." Yuna stood and looked at Dami. "What happens now? The Dominion is falling, but there will be chaos. Other empires will try to rise. Other threats will emerge." Dami nodded. "There will be, but now they know about us. Now they know what happens when you threaten Earth. We are not conquerors. We do not want to rule anyone. But we will never be victims. And that knowledge will spread farther than any army could." Yuna turned back to Taiho's grave. She touched the stone one more time. "I wish you could have seen it," she whispered. "I wish you could have seen what we became." The wind blew gently across the cemetery. Somewhere in the distance, birds were singing. Life continued as it always did, as it always would. Yuna walked out of the cemetery with Dami. At the gate, she stopped and looked back at the rows of white stones. "They are all heroes," she said. "Every single one. They gave everything so that others could be free." Dami nodded. "And we will not forget them. Ever." They walked together toward the waiting car. Above them, the sky was clear and blue, filled with stars that humanity was only beginning to explore. Somewhere out there, new civilizations were rising from the ashes of the old empire. New friendships were forming. New alliances were being built. And at the center of it all, single truth spread from world to world, from species to species, from one generation to the next. Once, small planet refused to be afraid. And it changed everything. Yuna looked up at the stars one last time. "We're just human," she said softly. And that was enough. It would always be enough.